Hello, welcome. Uh, it is now September, which means um, a new set is officially in to Revolution Custom Standard. Exalts of Twiltrie has joined the format. I am no longer the new set designer. I am now a crusty, old, curmudgeonly set designer. Don't worry, I'm still planning my comeback for 2027. That's not the topic for today. Today, I'm going to go through 12 decks I've brewed for the early stages of Exalts of Twiltrie Standard, kind of going over each card in them and why I included it and how strong I think these decks are. With the patch notes, this format seems pretty wide open. I don't have like a strong sense of what the best archetypes are going to be. There's a lot of different stuff here. Some other notes. The mono bases are all pretty rough. I did the mono base math, so they're all functional. The mono bases all have enough sources of all their relevant colors, um, but I think they probably could fit in a few extra utility lands. I did not exhaustively go through and figure out how many utility lands each deck could get away with and find the best ones for each deck. I just got you to number of sources. Secondly, the sideboards. First of all, it's hard to build a sideboard until you know anything about the format, because sideboards really depend on what other people are running. And also, I have not done the giant sideboard spreadsheet for any of these decks. That's where you go through every relevant matchup in the format, and you count how many cards you want to side out for that matchup, and then make sure you have exactly that many cards to side in. It's very easy if you're just kind of sideboarding by ear to end up with like, oh, I'm really afraid of aggro. I'm gonna put 5 anti-aggro cards in my sideboard, and then realize, wait, I only have 3 cards I want to bring out against aggro, so I've kind of wasted 2 sideboard slots. Um, I like doing that spreadsheet work, but I did not do it for these 12 decks. Okay, well, coming into a new format, I think the first question you should always ask is, how do I kill people as quickly as possible? I think Cat and Tree had the right idea last month, back in, right, 2 months ago now, not September, not August, but July, with EO the Great Equalizer. Uh, EO is a pretty good card. Um, this deck, this is pretty close to being Cat and Tree's deck from back then. I have Ardor in here. I think you're going to be having to recover from sweepers a little more often. So having kind of go over the top 4 drop is a good idea. This could easily be Teshima. Teshima. Uh, if you wanted to extend this to a 4th color, Teshima I think is better than Ardor, but it requires you to put islands in your deck, which you don't really have another reason to do that. Um, but that is an option. The mono base absolutely supports 4 colors, by the way. I've done the math. You could absolutely cast Teshima. Um, uh, EO is the star of the show here. The reason we're in green, the only card in the main deck that requires green mana. Um, makes your whole board 3/3s, which is good because you have so many 1/1 tokens in this deck. In fact, apart from Ardor, EO, and Green Graku, every single other card in this deck is a 1/1. Kitsune Matriarch, of course, very strong reason to be a tokens deck. Comes down on turn 1, grows to a must answer threat quite quickly, especially with Proclaimer of Blooming Wing. This is, I think, you might notice that there's actually not, even though, Twiltrie is the all anthems, all tokens, all the time set, there's only um, 3 new cards in this deck, but Proclaimer is a big one. This is a Raise the Alarm, essentially, for the purpose of this deck, that costs 1 mana. Um, Not only that, it triggers Kitsune Matriarch every turn. It attacks for 6 with EO, 4 with Ardor, 4 with Grauku, um, uh, and the main disadvantage is it is removable. It is vulnerable to shock, but I think by the time you're including Matriarch and Grauku, you've already accepted that shock's going to be good against you. So you might as well play this as well. I think I've been theory crafting some of the draws. Most of the turn 3 and 4 kills involve Proclaimer of Blooming Wing. It's that fast. Screeching Grauku is an excellent anthem. It, as I said, hits every card in the deck except EO and Ardor, and it hits Ardor's tokens. Um, uh, Probably the best anthem in the format, actually, right now. It's very strong. I have 2 Casus Belli. I've seen some people poo-pooing this card, saying that you want the other um, You want the other banishing list? I think I've cooled on it somewhat since my review, but I think it's still very good. And in particular in this deck where you really value the Goblin Oriflamme effect, good to have. Sparks of Revolution, excellent one drop. Dealing damage with three sources seems very easy. We don't have any burn in the main deck. We're fully committed to the tokens plan. You could easily run Abominable Avalanche. Whoops, no, don't put it in the deck right now. But you could easily run Abominable Avalanche. Or even Terminal Impact. Probably a little rough to run Bleeding Out. Oh, you could run the new one. You could run the one with Flashback, Sacrifice a Creature. That's probably actually the one I probably would run because you have no other instance anyways. Let me just bring that card up. Uh, This guy, Coordinated Shot. This Coordinated Shot would be quite good included in this deck. Fully legit thing you could do. It would make flipping Sparks of Revolution a little easier. The other new Twiltrie card is Advances of Sainted March. This is an excellent card. It's basically what if Sparks of Revolution was a 2-drop. Instead of 1 mana for 1 with haste, 2 mana for 2 1/1s. But if you can deal 3 damage to it, which it's not that you can't deal 3 damage to it. You sure can. It's just do you want to give up the damage? But if you do, you get effectively a second copy of Freedom. Whenever you attack, you get a 1/1 tapped and attacking. The last two answers in the deck are Edgeland Pledge. You can never pay the blue, but that doesn't matter. You could put once again, if you're going to do the Teshima, you get access to the blue, but just as 2 mana Oriflamme, 3 mana Oriflamme plus burn, 4 mana Oriflamme plus burn plus make a 1/1 that has haste and then attacks with the 2/1. And then you need, I think, between after Proclaimer and Advance, you need one more 2 mana token maker, and I think Ragtag Squad is the one. I could fully see you wanting Ruins Awaken instead. I could even imagine the one that destroys artifacts. There's plenty of options. I think the 1/1 haste is really valuable when you have Sparks of Revolution and Advanced Saint March. You're often going to like flip this, defeat this, then your opponent wipes your board, and what you really want is a creature with haste so that you can immediately trigger these abilities and start making 1/1s off them again. And Ragtag is the one that does that. I don't recommend Resolute Reinforcements on account of you have no other instance, so it's not very useful to leave it up. Mono base is heavy red white with one forest and 8 shocklands that can get it, plus 4 Primal Fissure. That is enough for EO, and everything else is a red white land. In the sideboard, as I said, these sideboards are a little rough. Here's some cards you might want. Advanced in Fire and Faith for other token decks. Crucible for other graveyard decks. I've been putting, as like, with the buff of a card we're going to see later, I'm putting this into a lot of decks. This deck has no graveyard synergy, so it's fully willing to play Crucible or Faces. I think Crucible is better here. Gift of Inspiration as card advantage against control. Looming Psyhawk, same matchups you want Advanced Fire and Face. Looming Psyhawk's a little more broad. It works against like Hardsuit, whereas Advanced really doesn't. But it doesn't clean up messes that have already happened. Mask Smith is just a generally good catch-all for a lot of different things. Melon, another good anti-control card, especially like stuff like mono black control that relies more on targeted removal. Pest Problem for artifact and enchantment spam decks. I'm not sure you even need Pest Problem these days. I don't know. Like, there's not that many decks it's that good against, but it's a good sideboard card, and once again, it does almost nothing to you. You just side out your Casus Belli when you side that in. And Shock. More anti-aggro, especially for anti-aggro that isn't hit that much by Looming Psyhawk. And especially decks with Huskforger. Shock's always a card you want in your deck when Huskforger exists. So this is like Cat and Tree got to finals with a deck that looked a lot like this. I think Casus Belli, Advance with Sainted March, and Proclaimer are all big upgrades. And there are plenty more other upgrades you could add. You might want to ask Cat and Tree. I think this is a little higher curve than Cat and Tree had it. Maybe I don't want 4 Ardors. In fact, in retrospect, I don't want 4 Ardors. I probably want 2 Ardors, 2 Ruins Awaken, just to fill out my curve a little better. But this deck looks properly scary. So if that's how we're going to kill people, how are we going to avoid dying to that? Well, I think this is my favorite deck I've built so far. This is Jeskai Battle Control. So let's talk about Exit first. Exit's a pretty good sweeper. It's only 4 mana, although it goes off in your next turn, so it's turn 5 sweeper, but it doesn't rely on you hitting your 5th land drop, so it's still upside. And it destroys creatures, enchantments, and planeswalkers. That's basically everything you care about against most decks. There's not a lot of like non-creature artifacts that are really like tormenting my nightmares. I guess Hardsuit tokens are the only ones I can think of. But other than that, Conistone, there's not that many things Exit misses. But crucially, the problem with Exit is it's a control card, but it doesn't let you run your own enchantments and planeswalkers. You couldn't run Sealing Strike with this. You couldn't run, I don't know, Illustrious Shenfall with this because your own Exit would blow up your own cards. But now we have battles, and Exit does not destroy battles. So we have, on top of Exit, we have another board wipe battle in Clash at Aura's Cross. This is the 5 mana board wipe battle, and if we can just deal 2 damage to this, it'll make us a 1/1 on our end step every turn. And then we can do 2 more damage to it to make them 2/2s with Vigilance, I guess. Advance the Quiet Moon is a catch-all removal spell. This card actually survives completely unchanged. It's 3 mana for a battle that is a Banishing Light. It's just a Banishing Light that's a battle, and there is no mass battle destruction in the entire format. There is no creature that destroys a battle on enter. If you want to destroy a battle, you have to commit to playing a 2+ mana value sorcery that just destroys battles, or destroys battles and other things, but is less efficient in other ways. Meaning battles are really tough to kill. Um, I expect many decks will have no main deck ways of getting out of Advance of the Quiet Moon. It also does something when it's defeated, but it literally is irrelevant. It involves non-token creatures, which this deck cannot make. Clash at Mistrit Vale makes a 1/1 whenever we cast a non-creature spell, and if we can deal 2 damage to it, we get an instant or sorcery back from our graveyard to our hand, and if it's defeated, it makes our non-creature spells cost 2 less to cast. That's every spell in our deck. Um, and there's Passive Scales. 4 mana, draw 3 cards. If we can just deal 2 damage to it, we get Cumberstone. Our opponent creature get -1/-0. I've been playing Limited not long enough to know that that effect is better than it looks. Not just against go wide decks. That effect just is more annoying than you think it would be. And if you can deal another 3 damage to it, it copies all of our non-creature spells. Once again, that's every card in our deck. Now you may notice that all of these battles have 4 or 5. Okay, Advance of Quiet Moon doesn't count. But the other ones have neared 2 damage for their first stage and 4 or 5 damage for their second stage, which means we can get to the first stage with Shock or Firebolt or Sistral Charm, and we can get to the second stage all in one go with electronic countermeasures. That's really efficient. If we pay 1 mana for, so like Clash at Aura's Cross is a card we'd almost consider without any of the text below the first ability, but now, after we play it, we can follow up with a Shock, and that Shock essentially is a 1 mana Bitter Blossom. That's pretty good. So yeah, that's why we're in red. We're in red for all of the burn that hits battles. 2 damage is the most important threshold on these battles, and so we have 4 shocks and 1 firebolt. I wanted slightly more of that. Sistral Charm is just an excellent 2-drop in this deck. It can do the same thing Shock does. It also counters artifacts, enchantments, battles, and of course kills creatures. That's nice. Countermeasures can unlock the battle all in one go. That can be pretty scary if we get the full abilities on Passive Scales or Clash at Mistrit Vale all in one go. Those are some pretty intimidating abilities. Like Passive Scales. Next turn, countermeasures it. Now we can immediately follow up with an exit because countermeasures cost 3, but exit now costs 2. Um, at the 2-drop slot, unfortunately, we can't really take advantage of Overrule Thought because this deck has no graveyard synergy at all. The mill counterspell is quite good, so it's on Death Deflection instead. And because it's a control deck, we are also on Unravel Thoughts. This card is quite good, especially when you're on the play. We have enough cheap interaction that will be able to keep our hand down on turn 3 when this matters. Counters their spell, draw a card, or tap all their creatures. This is Cryptic Command, but it's a different order. If you like, the most annoying thing about Cryptic Command is that it happens in order, and the order sometimes matters. And here the order is different. So you have please remember the order on this. Reread it each time. And of course, because of the deck we just saw, the Naya Tokens deck, I'm really not comfortable playing Control without like blockers or 3 mana sweepers. In this case, being Jeskai, we get access to Deafening Clarion. The lifelink mode could even matter with Clash of the Aura Cross. If we're like low, but we've stabilized the board, and we have a bunch of tokens, but we're afraid of Faceburn, Clarion, lifelink could even matter. Mostly it's just 3 mana, 3 damage to each creature. Between this, exit, and clash, we have so much board wipe. that so much removal that this should be pretty favored against any kind of creature deck. It could have struggle against like more mid-rangey stuff that does have answers to our battles, like green black Jund stuff type stuff. Land base is normal. I have a couple paths in here. I have the shock lands. I even have Cityscape in this deck. Um, I could go either way on Cityscape in this deck, but I think because we have a lot of intense mono requirements, double white and double blue, Cityscape is good at accessing double white and double blue. And we don't necessarily need a turn one play, so we could afford the tap land. Sideboard. Once again, this deck has no graveyard synergy, so it can play Crucible of the Burning Sun, no problem. I just said that Exit doesn't work with Shengfa. It works just fine. This is a good thing to bring in against control. It's kind of a trump card, or against like slow mid-range decks. Looming Psyhawk, of course, you always need it. Mistrit Archivist. This is a card. This is like a thing I love doing is bringing in creature-based threats in control mirrors. When they side out all of their creature interaction, you side in stuff like Mistrit Archivist, which can draw a card every turn and take over the game if they don't have removal for it, and it's actually pretty big. It's an 0/5, so a lot of important removal does not kill it. Negate, you might notice there's a ton of anti-control in this sideboard. That's because the main deck is so anti-aggro, and if we face another creatureless deck, we have so many cards we need to side out. Hence, Archivist, Negate, Shengfa, even Crucible sometimes. And of course, Path Problem. Maybe necessary, maybe not, but can't can't hurt to have it. Okay, how that's aggro and control. How about mid range? How do we feel about mid range? Well, here's a mid range deck. There's a lot of them. This is black green mid range. And you notice this deck list is kind of a mess. It's got a ton of one ofs and two ofs and three ofs. That's mostly just this is how I often start out in a new format. Is I'll put in like one ofs and two ofs and three ofs of all the cards I'm interested in, and then after a couple of games, I'll see if they're like performing up to snuff. And if the ones that aren't will get cut, and I'll kind of refine the deck list in the direction I want because there are so many options for black green mid range. Of course, you want 4 Huskforge Acolyte. That's like, of course you do. Of course, you want 4 Exorcist of Errors. I have 2 Catabolists in this deck. This deck has a graveyard theme. You could build black green mid range with no graveyard theme. You could build it with a vigor theme where it cares about gaining and losing life. You could build it, as I said, as I do here, with a graveyard theme. We have a couple things to enable Catabolist. It's a good card in this deck. We also have one of Inklight Dancer to take advantage of all our creatures and just be a little bit more removal. One of Masksmith. This deck could easily become an Ozin's Blessing deck, by the way. Ozin's Blessing, 4 Exorcist, Inklight, Masksmith, Morbid Bloomer, Reaper of Blossom. That's a pretty good package. Masksmith just useful to have around. Can even trigger our own Catabolist in a pinch, although that seems kind of dicey. Morbid Bloomer is still an excellent card in this day and age. Reaper of Blossom, I think, is the big get for all green X, especially green black mid range decks. The reason I have a graveyard theme here. This card is just excellent as a 2 mana 2/3 that gains you a life each turn, but it also generates card advantage if you can pay the green, which is really quite excellent. Um, in fact, between Huskforger and Reaper, there's actually room to put a 5-drop in this deck. There's just no 5-drop I really want. Like, the 5-drop I'm closest to playing is this one, Fiend of the Crimson Pact, the 5-mana 5/5 that tutors when it hits them. But I honestly, there's enough card advantage in here that I'm fine with no 5-drop. Maybe that's wrong. This deck could also easily run like Lifehacker, just a 4-drop as well. But part of the reason I have so many different one-offs, or one reason I'm justifying that to myself, is it lets me play Seeker of the Pre-Weft. I know in my heart of hearts, Seeker of the Pre-Weft is probably still not good, but I mean, Morbid Bloomer, not Morbid, Reaper of Blossoms, sure, makes Seeker of the Pre-Weft seem a lot more real. Like, you could turn 2 Reaper Blossoms, mill a good chunk of cards, maybe kill your Reaper of Blossoms, and then you could turn 3 Seeker of the Pre-Weft, and that sounds pretty good. Alternately, if you want a 3-drop that generates card advantage for the time, it's a lot easier to work with. Just Vardo. Oh, and I'm big on the 1 of Spiky. Not 2 of Spiky. I never want to draw 2 of them ever. That's a disaster. But, Spiky's pretty good. If you draw exactly 1 over the course of the game, it provides a source of card advantage that can be really annoying for certain decks. I got Root Fossil in this deck. Root Fossil, even though we have a Huskforger, Root Fossil is still an excellent card. The backside of Root Fossil remains an extremely dangerous threat in a deck like this that clogs up the ground and kind of takes over in the late game. I have Pact Beyond Death in this deck. I'm pretty high on this card, actually. Why does... I just looked at the frame on this card. Why is there 4 arrows on the 4 defense thing? I don't think the other battles look like that. That's probably not supposed to be like that. Anyways, I'm the enter trigger on this. Funnily enough, it's almost exactly the enter trigger on Research Grant. It's fine. Um, the 4 defense mode. If you do 2 damage to this, which like once again, Exorcist of Errors, Catabolist, Morbid Bloomer, Reaper of Blossoms, that could easily happen. That's a really strong effect. We don't have a ton of like card draw and looting. There's a deck later that takes advantage of this much better because it has tons of that. Um, but and like fully defeating this, searching up an important card kind of justifies all these one mana, not one drops or 1 mana cards, one ofs, all these one ofs. Um, could work. There is tons of 2 mana interaction you could be playing in this deck. Like I don't even have Hang in this deck. Its deck could easily run Hang. It's got 3 drops. But I think Sovereign's Execution is probably better as your 2 mana creature interaction. I also have Revivified Wrath, which is a very similar card, except it's a sorcery, and it hits any non-land permanent. Our creatures are actually, a lot of them decently beefy, so we can run Chronicle of Extinction. Love Duress in this meta. As you saw with that Naya Tokens deck, like, a lot of the creature-based aggro decks have plenty of non-creature cards, and so Duress, very unlikely to miss, except against, like, mono green Stompy. And Downlink Overload, just because with no sweeper, I would like a little more insurance against aggro. Oh, and Dolcairn Charm. Look, there's so much removal you could be running that hits small creatures and has the life drain mode, which could be relevant, and it can buy back any of your creatures, which can, a lot of them, start generating value to keep going. Land base is very normal, except I have Gallows Fruit Timber in here. Exactly the kind of late game mono 6 this kind of deck wants. Even the little incidental graveyard hate, which is very nice. I really wish I could play a black a because this deck kind of wants to be a little heavier green for Huskforger. I kind of wish it was the other way. I prefer it was a black card that cared about forests, but unfortunately, this is the creature that you have to play. Temple of Origins, of course, big incentive to play 2 colors, but I think there's a lot of very good reasons you, even though like this deck had so many cards that I couldn't even play all the cards I wanted to run. That's why there's so many one ofs. I mean, if you went into Jund, if you went into Red as well, you could play maybe best card in the format, Fabricated Anomaly. I mean, that's a Huskforger Acolyte Fabricated Anomaly sounds great to me. And you could even, I mean, you could play another one of the best cards in the format, Abominable Avalanche. I mean, that's a great card as well. Absolutely spectacular in this kind of deck. And you'd also get access to the new, Work Safety Violation. I'm not enormously high on this card. I think Revivified Wrath does enough of the things you want Work Safety Violation to do that you're not super into this. But if you're Jund already, I think you'd play it. I think there's a lot of stuff in this kind of black, green, red, even like black, green, white, or Sultai even. There's some good blue cards for this kind of thing flying around. Mid-rangey deck. I don't even have any planeswalkers in this. You could easily run whatever that planeswalker is. That is uh Selice. You could easily run Selice in this deck. Especially if you were more of like if you were more into the like vigor side of the black green stuff, you could easily run Selice. Ooh, look at this new Guiama. I never got this promo. Ooh, sorry, let me not get distracted by new promos. Sideboard, Anik Oathbound, I think is a pretty good anti-aggro card, even though you can only get it back once now. The backside is really, really annoying. Ignore all the other abilities. That -1 is a real pain. Clash of the Shaded Maw. This this card, I have it in the sideboard of basically all my black deck. It's asymmetric graveyard hate. It doesn't affect your graveyard at all, which is good because this deck cares about its graveyard. But like 2 mana, pretty close to being Rest in Peace is, of course, just fine. But the if you can defeat this, which is like not an unreasonable ask, you get to start playing all of their cards with this by paying life. Which is kind of ridiculous on your sideboard hate card. Duress, of course, you'd love that. Culling Ritual against aggro or tokens decks. Um, you could put more removal in the sideboard if you're like, there's some matchups where I really just want to have more unconditional removal. Absolutely fine. I have Serve Again as a sneaky little option. This is against like removal heavy decks, grindy, controlling matchups. Once again, I love diversifying threats against control. We have no enchantments made, so having an enchantment in the sideboard is nice. And this, this card's a ton of value. We don't only have Inklight Dancer as an actual sack outlet, but even still, just protecting our creatures, most of which have like enter triggers. It's pretty nice. Get a copy of Morbid Bloomer, use it to get back actual Morbid Bloomer. Okay. Um, so let's move out of black-green Husk Forger decks and into a Naya Husk Forger deck. So this is Plush Collection. So there's a lot between Husk Forger and Foreign Encounter and Revolt at the Palace. There's a lot of reasons to want to put 3 mana value cards in your deck. And one really excellent 3 mana value card that happens to work really well with Husk Forger is Plush Collection. Um, uh, like turn 1 Husk Forger, turn 2 Plush Collection, turn 3 you can already start copying Husk Forgers. And Husk Forger is a great thing to copy a Plush Collection because, like, you used to do this with Stockbroker, and it was pretty good with Stockbroker too. Every turn you make a stockbroker is, yeah, every once you get it going, on your turn you tap a stockbroker, you get an extra stockbroker. On their turn you tap a stockbroker, you get a stockbroker. You're getting 2 of these a turn, you're ramping 2 a turn, and eventually you start paying the double X. Husfar just like that, except with the 1-drop, and instead of paying like 6 mana to get 3+3+3 in stats, you pay 6 mana to get +4+4 and trample in stats. Um, of course, Ironback Tyke is also an excellent 3-drop. This card is always overperformed every time I've seen it. Great with Plush Collection, of course. While you're playing all these cards with activated abilities and Foreign Encounter, you might as well run Contest Coordinator. I was kind of stumped trying to find another 2-drop in this deck after Stockbroker. I set it on Amber. Amber is not like a perfect fit for this deck, but it works with Plush, it works with Contest Coordinator, it works if you do. It doesn't work with Husk Forger or Stockbroker, but it works with like the other activated abilities like Melon. I don't know. There's not. It works with Primal Fissure, always. I don't know. If you have a better idea for a 2-drop, usually you used to run Menelea in this deck, and that was great, but unfortunately Menelea is rotated. I was also looking for another 3-drop, and I thought of, what about Competitive Hedonist? Now this card it's only okay, but you can get enough Contest Coordinator, and it's a 3-drop with an activated ability, crucially. So it works with all the things, and you can when you make the 1/1 toy copies of this with Plush Collection, if you level up the 1/1 toy, it becomes a 4/4 instead of, so it kind of undoes the downside of Plush Collection if you level it up. Melon, of course, creature-based deck wants to protect its stuff. It's an activated ability, makes another permanent with an activated ability. And Sealing Strike. This deck can actually the reason to want Sealing Strike over the other Banishing Lights, the like 3 of them in Exalts of Twiltrie, because this is the one you can get off Contest Coordinator, which is very nice because there's only 2 basic planes in the entire deck. I have 1 each of Crucible of Bound Flame and Fort Ravelon. You can actually trigger. These are non-mana activated abilities for stuff like Amber. You can even copy them with Plush Collection if you activate twice in the same turn, although that seems a little sin. These are actually pretty good creature lands, and I think it's worth trying to run them, because your mana base is otherwise pretty decent. Sideboard, once again, no graveyard synergy to this deck. You run Crucible, you want Looming Psyhawk. Searing Grace is a card I nearly put in the main deck. Obviously, it's pretty good in this deck. If you're looking in a match where you need more burn, that's the play. And of course, creature heavy deck, you can play Thunderous Avalanche as your artifact and enchantment hate of choice. So, this is a deck I'm not super familiar with. This is based closely on, I think, All Who Wanders build of this from last season. And I think if you're expecting, like, aggro, gum up the board type stuff, not a lot of removal. The weakness of this deck is, I ramped into Plush Collection, but then they just killed all of my creatures every turn, so this Plush Collection didn't do anything. So, I guess that's what Melon is for. This deck seems pretty strong. Oh, by the way, once again, this is another deck where I could be running Fabricated Anomaly, and I'm not. You could easily run Fabricated Anomaly in this deck. It's good in every deck. I only suggested Hedonist over Anomaly because it can be hit off of Contest Coordinator, and I think works better with Plush Collection, but Anomaly is a really good card. Really, really good card. Like, there's never a bad time to play Anomaly. Here's another deck that I'm, like, pretty excited about. This is me kind of cooking. Basically, a couple months ago, I discovered that Boro is a really good card. It's like, you just need ways to blink it. One of these days, someone should print me a donate effect so I can give this to my opponent. But until then, With ways to blink this, it can be um, a real value engine, the real core of a deck. And I thought, now previously I was blinking with Soul Space Refit, which is still pretty good, but I realized I completely overlooked Worrying Inspector. Worrying Inspector can target yourself, and if you target yourself with Worrying Inspector, um, you get you can exile and blink one of your own permanents. It reveals your hand to your opponent, which is slightly awkward, but whatever. 3 mana, 3/2 flash, blink, borrow. That's pretty good. Unfortunately, it comes back at your next turn, so you have to do the sack first. Whatever. And white also gives you access to very important sideboard Looming Psyhawk. You might notice that Inspector is the only white card in the main deck. You could run Plasma Strike in this deck. That'd easily be possible. And then I thought, well, once I'm running these cards, what about Blind Keela? Could I run Blue-Black Flash with Borrow? And in fact, every card in this deck is an instant or has Flash except for Borrow and Exorcist of Errors. So, Blind Keela rewards us for playing lots of spells during our opponent's turn. Exorcist is obviously a great card in every deck. Preemption Demon. This deck is tempo-y enough to actually take advantage of Preemption Demon. Rabura Goliath gets discounted by all of our flash cards, which is a ton of them. Also, we're going to mill ourselves somewhat with Overrule Saw, which is going to target ourselves to mill 3 cards. And that's going to further fuel Rabura Goliath. We have Downlink Overload and Hang as our nice suite of removal. This is one of the few decks where I would run Hang over Sovereign's Execution because we have Borrow. Borrow is a 3 mana value permanent that very rarely gets destroyed. So we can actually Hang. And we have very little way of triggering the life loss thing on our opponent's turn for Sovereign Execution. Soul Faith Refit, 6 blink spells for Borrow, I think is enough. You'd love a little more, but Refit, also not the ends of the world. You'd have to target a demon, or even this even targets your opponent's stuff, by the way. You can, if you just need to delay an attacker for a turn, it does do that. Kill a token. And 3 become 1. Hey, you know what else Exorcist of Errors and Worrying Inspector are? They're an artifact, a creature of flying, a creature of 3 power, a warlock, and a warlock. So you can actually do that in this deck, which I think is hilarious. And I think this deck card is also just generally good in this kind of deck. Lets you have a form of card draw that doesn't require you to take down your defenses on your opponent's turn. And it can even flash in a Borrow on your opponent's turn. I don't know, that seems pretty good. Flash an Exorcist of Errors on their draw step. That seems pretty mean. Advance of Rune and Whisper. Look, I'm not super high on Advance of Rune and Whisper. I don't think this deck is aggressive enough to fully take advantage of an unsummon, but like, the 1 mana value options for this deck are pretty lackluster. Like, I was really like, if I had like any kind of 1 mana threat, it doesn't even have to have Flash. Like, last standard, I would have played Aphanize Revenant. Just like, get a thing down turn 1, then I have all my interactive cards on turns 2 and later, and then Aphanize Revenant can kind of build up over time. That'd be great, but that's rotated, and there's really no good replacement. Like, I could play Sleeper Strix. It's another artifact creature of flying, I guess, but it's just not doing it for me, Sleeper Strix. I have no Surveil, it's just not enough pressure. I wish I could play Rooftop Slink. This deck doesn't really want to discard that many cards. It doesn't have stuff it wants to put in the graveyard. That's really what this deck is missing, is like a really good one-drop. If someone can dig up a one-drop I've not heard of, that I haven't thought of, that's good for this deck, I think this deck actually can go pretty good places, and even this version can go places. Land base is normal. Once again, Clash of the Shaded Maw, because if you're for graveyards, Psyhawk, Pest Problem, Duress, and Plasma Strike. I'm generally higher on Overload over Strike. Overload can kill Huskforger before it attacks you, or like before it generates mana for the first time, which is hugely relevant. Remember to stay hydrated. So now we're gonna come to a deck that got a lot better with the patch notes. This is Blue-Red Looter Stompy. This is very similar to a deck that Scribble ran, I think, back in the May Grand Prix, but it's gotten 2 very important cards. So first of all, this is a deck built around looter effects. And look, we got Ignited Soul on 1. That rummages whenever it hits them. We got Gilded Entertainer, new card on 2. We can rummage whenever this attacks, and it can gain first strike that way. We have Fabricated Anomaly on 3. This gets us the ability to rummage for the rest of the game. What are we rummaging away? We're rummaging away this scuttling cicada. This scuttling cicada, when it goes into our graveyard and we fill up our graveyard, we can surface this as a 3/2 flyer. That's pretty good. We can discard this Igneous Visions. Discarding Igneous Visions just basically gives us card advantage for all our discard. We can discard, and this is a new card, Dawnsworn Survivor. There are no forests in this deck. This deck is incapable of casting Dawnsworn Survivor. But this is the key to the whole thing. Once we have any of our looter engines set up, or we mill this in any other way, uh, we just get to like hit use Ignited Soul, discard Survivor, cast 2 spells. This deck is very low curve. It can cast 2 spells very easily, just like Igneous Visions into another spell. That's 2 spells. That lets us get back Dawnsworn Survivor. Next turn, do it again. You can do this with Stargazing. But this is the aggro version. This version wants its looting effects to come on rummaging effects. I guess they're all rummaging effects to be on creatures because it wants to be more assertive. Stargazing is also an excellent card. Artful Hologram is less necessary. The Scribbles version ran 4. I've trimmed these, although you do want 1-drops because you're trying to double spell a lot. And Artful Hologram is a pretty good 1-drop for this deck. You could also run the new one. Fang, I believe it's called Fang. Yep, Fang of the Pale Thorn. You could easily run this one instead. Blocking is a thing this deck would like to do sometimes, so I think I'm on Artful. Um, but I think like this is like you had this for additional card draw if you ran into gas, but now we have Survivor, which gives us even more card advantage. So we don't need it as much, although it's still good. Research Grant. This deck takes excellent advantage of Research Grant on account of it wants to put things in its graveyard. It has a million ways to draw cards, and it can easily cast 2 spells. Once you flip this, you can copy all sorts of things. The best thing to copy, Flashback Scuttling Cicada. It lets you pay 2 mana for 2/3/2 flyer. That's pretty good. Bleeding Out is an excellent burn spell, as is Coordinated Shot. That's a big get for this deck. This deck often like plays as kind of tempo aggro in the early turns and then transitions into a burn deck later on. And Coordinated Shot is burn that you can then flash back, sacking any of your dinky creature that can no longer get in, to deal 3 extra burn, maybe the last 3 points of burn to their face. Sideboard lands are normal, and I have Firebolts and Shocks in the sideboard. Verdant Radiance. I don't think Verdant Radiance is like extremely necessary, but there's not a ton of great mono red sideboard cards. There's Advance of Fire and Face. There's Seafloor Treasures for control. Burn to Obscurity. Extra burn hits bigger creatures. I'm pretty high on this deck. Like I ran a decent amount of this late into the format. I think it's a good deck. Now onto a deck that I'm sure you've heard a lot about from my good friend Provocative. It's Green X Stompy. This is Green Red Stompy. I think I'm highest because, so first of all, Huskbar Draglet's a pretty good card. You know what else is pretty good? Aspiring Anarchist with Sleeper Insurgent. Also Growing Gecko with either of those 1-drops. Redeemer of Hollow Flesh doesn't have Ward anymore, thank God, but it's still an excellent card, especially turn 2 off a Husk Forger. Yens. There's that 4-mana 5/6/5 that's basically a questing beast, like it has stats and a bunch of irrelevant text. I think Yens is better than that 4-mana 4/4 haste over 4-mana 6/5 trample. I have a Roar as the 5-drop of choice. There's other 5-drops you could run with Husk Forger. I think you do want a 5-drop. Aurora's kind of awkward, given Husk Forger attacks for colorless, and there are 2 mountains in this deck, but I don't know. The other options did not inspire me in green red. Abominable Avalanche is an excellent card when you're doing this kind of thing. Terminal Impact takes advantage of Acolyte Ramp. Momentous Strike's a little odd. Like, the reason I'm splashing into red is because the removal in mono green is not very good. You got like Momentous Strike and that's it. But I still want Momentous Strike because I'm low on quota of ways to untap Sleeper Insurgent. Menelaya used to be a very good way to untap Sleeper Insurgent, and now that's gone, so you need a little bit more juice. Momentous Strike can do it. You can also ping it for 1 with Avalanche if you really have to. And of course, Fabricated Anomaly. If you're going to splash into red, why not play the best 3-drop in the format in Fabricated Anomaly? I've managed to cram in 3 Buffery Conservatory into the mono base, which only has 2 mountains to support these heavy green costs. Sideboard is normal, Crumbling Tower as an anti-control tool, and Warden of Tremors as an anti-mid-range go-over-the-top card. This card impressed me last month. Obviously, that was Brawl, where things can stall out a little longer, but I think, like, I've already shown you many decks that don't have a lot of removal, don't have a lot of interaction, but do kind of gum up the ground with creatures. that can absolutely become a problem. Warden of Tremors goes over the top of that. I think if you want to hear more of this deck, you should go watch Provocative, who has like a 3-part series at this point about green Stompy going into Exalts of Twiltrie. You could also run green white, by the way. Uh, Survivors of the New World is a really good card. If you wanted that instead, you could run green white instead of green red. I just think that the removal is too good to pass up. So now time for maybe one of the decks I'm most excited about. Why? It's Golems! Hey, did you know that Golems are still good? Golems are still good. Golems got 2 very important cards. They got Huskforger Acolyte. This deck would love to ramp into its 2, 3, and 4 drops that also have expensive activated abilities. It has a lot of importance. Also, Ozin's Blessing. Turns 2 Ozin's Blessing is very nice. It also got Reflected Echo. This is so much better for this deck than the old Blue Chronicle. And you may notice this is straight Sultai Golems, and it has just these as our Golems. We have no non-Titan Golems, which is sad. Ragtag Squad got nerfed. You could easily, by the way, I really considered making this no red Golems for exactly 1 white card, which would, of course, be the Ruins Awaken. This card's really good, obviously, in Golems. It's just like the 4-color mono was not speaking to me with the need to have untapped turn 1 green for Huskforger. This as once again, I mean, apart from Golems, things that copy Golems, and it's just like the best of removal. We got Hang. Once again, we have hard to remove 3 mono value permanents, so I think Hang is okay. Ozin's Blessing has a small package. We lose access to Agent of Deception, which is a really important Ozin's Blessing package. We still have Masksmith, Exodus of Errors, and new Skytide Piercer. This card got nerfed, but I think it's still worth having to give Ozin's Blessing the 4-mana counterspell option. We still don't love board wipes in Sultai Golems, so counterspells are nice for that. Overrule Thought, speaking of counterspells, not a ton of mill synergy in this particular deck, but there's Seafloor Treasures, just to help us find more Golems. You could absolutely run, like, there's tons, because of Ozin's Blessing and Reflected Echo, 2 3-mana instants, you really want to play a lot of 2 and 3-mana instants in this deck. You could be playing Root Fossil, you could be playing Ensorcel, you could be playing Sovereign's Execution, you could be playing all manner of 3-mana value instants or flash cards to kind of take this in a slightly more controlling direction, still fully capable of like turn 2 golem, turn 3 golem, turn 4 golem, kill you. Sideboard is normal. Culling Ritual is pretty good in golems. It kills blue golem, but the other golems survive. You don't typically need an enormous amount of anti-aggro in golems because Titan is already good against it, but I do want Culling Ritual as a board wipe because golems can have a weakness to people going really, really wide. So wide on Speaking Titan can't tap down all of their threats. So yeah, it's been a while since we've looked at a control deck. Let's look at another control deck. This is Mono Black Control. So this is a deck that saw some success early in the Eras in the West Standard, and it got a very important card. It got Reign of Blight. This is a 4-mana sweeper, and if you configure it, which is not that hard, you can get its -5/-5 instead. So including this deck means you have to rejigger your deck a little more. Most importantly, it's really bad with Exorcist of Errors. Like 2 mana, 3 toughness, then putting it with a 4-mana Wrath that is -3/-3, it's a little awkward. That's why I have Life Hacker here. I also have Inner Rings. I think you could probably cut the Inner Rings and play something like, if you want a slightly more lower curve, you could play Program Pursuer. This card we haven't seen a lot recently. It's still quite a good card. It's really annoying against a lot of aggro decks, and it can become a card advantage engine on its own as well. And it survives. It survives the -3/-3 Wrath. Now, Sovereign Execution is the new pot removal spell, and we also do want to have a wave enabling Vigor on Raven Blade, which is what leads me to Sifting Through Soot. I think this is our best way of consistently gaining life in mono black. In like turn 2, Sifting Through Soot, turn 3, remove a thing, turn 4, Rain of Blight for -5/-5. That seems pretty good. Other than that, it's all the mono black hits you know and love. All that remains as excellent card draw and filtering. Damn to Hell, the reason to be mono black. I can't believe I haven't brought it up yet. Downlink Overload, and necessary card against aggro. Duress, main deck Duress, as I've said, I'm pretty high on it. It hits against almost every deck. Final Fate, another good removal spell if you're in mono black. Forced Shutdown. This is my concession to the fact that battles exist and enchantments exist. And even though this card is not great on its own and you'll side it out a lot, I do want a main deck out to annoying battles. Like if my opponent gets down uh, Clash at Aurus Cross and starts making 1/1 tokens, like I need a way to deal with that. Otherwise, there's just nothing this deck can do. Passive and Resolved, a more excellent card draw. Also, triggers Vigor if you care about that for like Sovereign's Execution. Lands all swamps, including 4-keep Ludicon, as you'd expect. And sideboard has Exorcist of Airs. In matchups where I don't need Frame of Blight, you can bring an Exorcist, because that's the only reason you're not playing it. Failed Gateway is also probably a necessary card for dealing with aggro. And for like mid-range value off deck games, Salice is an option. Salice is a very good card. And I'm also thinking, if we're gaining enough life off sifting through Soot, and we got enough high mono value stuff like Damned to Hell and Inner Rings, maybe this could be the deck for Keon. Just a thought. Maybe it's not good, but even just 5 on a 5/5 Death Touch, enters, draw 2 cards, lose like 3 or 4 life on average, is still like a pretty decent card. As long as your life total is not being pressured. That's why it's not main deck. If they're pressuring your life total, forget it. Just a couple more decks to go. So we saw a Survivor deck, a Survivor Looter deck, that would kind of more aggro and burn tune. But here's a different approach. This is Blue-Black Reanimator. So this is Dawnstorm Survivor, Stargazing. This is the core thing we're built around. Stargazing lets us pay 1 mana to loot every turn. If the card we're looting away is Dawnstorm Survivor, as long as we play another spell that turn, then we get to pick up Dawnstorm Survivor and do it every turn. This is a really strong card advantage engine that isn't a permanent. Only counterspells can interact with this, and because a lot of the counterspells you care about are taxing counterspells, and Stargazing is the first spell you cast on your turn, and so you usually have 2 mana available, like Overrule Thought doesn't even stop you. We want a few extra looting effects on top of Stargazing, so we have Receive, which can bin cards, Pact Beyond Death, which can bin cards, we'll get back to those later. Casimir's is technically a looter, and we have 2 Ignited Soul. Possibly should be 4 Ignited Soul. This card's pretty good, because in addition to being a Stargazing card, while we're looting away cards, we have tons of ways to filter our draws, fill our graveyard, why not discard Reclaim the Fallen and reanimate Privilege Escalation? Reclaim the Fallen, form on a flashback, return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, and Privilege Escalation, a pretty good thing to bring back. And then on top of having a Stargazing package and a Reanimate package, we're also a Casimir's deck. This card is kind of expensive, and it's not Delirium, it's 5 or more card types. That's pretty hard. Although it can come down, if they only have 1 threat that we care about, we can come down, minus, kill that threat, and then we have still a 1 loyalty Planeswalker. What we really want to do is come down, +1, pick up a card, and have 5 or more types, and then flip it into He Who Shed His Death. Ooh, better art! Yay, I didn't like the previous He Who Shed His Death art at all. Which will then have 4 loyalty counters on it, and therefore have protection from mana values 3 or less, which is basically all the things that kill Planeswalkers except for Chronicle of Extinction and the big green threats. Which if they had a big threat, we would have minused Casimir's. And then we just have this completely unkillable Planeswalker, which seems pretty good. Unfortunately, to do that, we have to run... We've got creatures and sorcery we want to run anyways. Instance, Overrule Thought's not much of a pain to include. It also mills us to enable our Survivor, Escalation, Reclaim the Fallen, and Sovereign's Execution, of course, the default removal spell for black decks. But we also want more card types, so that's why we have Receive, which is not a bad card. It's just like we'd probably running 4 Ignited Soul, no Receive, if not for Casimir's, and Pact Beyond Death. This is the deck I mentioned earlier that can really take advantage of Pact Beyond Death. We draw so many cards. If we get this down and get to deal 2 damage to it, which we can do with an Exorcist or an Ignited Soul, or it's not trivial, we can do it, then every Stargazing gains us 2 life. So we get 2 life off our draw step and 2 off Stargazing. That's 4 a turn. We get even more off Ignited Soul and Mistrit Archivist, which I think is an excellent card in this kind of like control-y but not creatureless deck. Very hard to kill, very hard to interact with favorably, blocks really well. Because all our creatures have Ignited Soul have 3 or more toughness, we can even run Chronicle of Extinction. That's another great thing to discard to Stargazing late in the game. We're running Chasm of the Silent Covenant. Once again, I really wish this was a blue one that cared about swamps, because we want to run more swamps than islands. for the purposes of stuff of Flashback Reclaim the Fallen. But whatever, we'll run the black one that needs islands, even though we have fewer islands than swamps. It's not a big deal. Similar things in the sideboard. I have Fiends of Crimson Pact in here as my big dumb 5-drop of choice. There were certain matchups where I just wanted more high impact cards, especially if they're siding in a ton of graveyard hate. You kind of want to take out the whole Reanimator package, which you can do. It's only 7 cards, and you have reasons to care about discarding and looting. Even if you're not doing that, this could also play Research Grant. By the way, could easily play Research Grant. This is kind of a spicy card. I'm trying to cram like 3 different synergy packages into one deck. I'm not sure how good this is, but I'm excited to take it for a spin. Okay, I got 2 more decks that I'm like less confident in, but just for being such a good customer and coming all this way, I'll give you decks 11 and 12 on the house. Starting with Green White Vow. This is mainly just, do you hate creature decks? Do you not want to lose to creature decks? Do you want to have blockers forever? Then why not play Vow's Reflection? At the beginning of your end step, you can bounce one of your creatures to draw a card. Ooh, I'd like to bounce my Melon Defense Attorney. That seems pretty good. This is a Huskforger deck, of course. Vow is a very mono-hungry card, so we are on Huskforger. Obviously, should probably be 4 of them. This deck is, but we're kind of base white, so the turn 1 green's a little awkward. 2-drops that are good to bounce over and over again are Male Demon, which is also an excellent blocker, and Dawnspark Vanguard, which kind of keeps picking up planes for us to get us to our later game stuff. Softlight Harmonist is another way to bounce our creatures while keeping on board on tempo. One of Masksmith, always a useful thing to have around. On 3, there weren't any 3-drops that super inspired me, so we have Casus Belli. This deck has enough creatures that Ansem is quite useful, and Advances the Quiet Moon as the other answer of choice. Now, this deck could actually defeat and care about defeating Advances the Quiet Moon. And Renowned Rough Rider. I think that's a pretty good card to pick up with Vow's Reflection. And then up at 4, kind of the reason we're doing this, Survivors of the New World. If you blink Survivors of the New World with Vow's Reflection, you can pick up the real one and then play it again and make 2 more tokens. And aggro decks hate blocking Survivors of the New World over and over and over again. Up at 4, we have Dawnhymn Herald. This card got nerfed, but I think it's still quite good. Gains life, gums up the board, exiles big creatures, big mid-range value winner, sided out against control, doesn't do anything. Once again, great way to pick up your Survivors, or your Melon, or your Male Demon, etc. And I think Darusha has a chance here. This is exactly... Darusha's a powerful card that just hasn't had a home before, but this is a slow deck. It's heavy white, and it has a ton of creatures. Those are the kind of things that make you need Darusha. Not really a good thing to blink, but, like, I don't know, you just play an attack with it. That seems good enough. And this deck makes excellent use of the Dutiful Wanderer, because there's so many things you want to blink. And it can protect the Dutiful Wanderer, so, like, well, if they can't attack with more than 4 power, and if they attack with less than 4 power, you can just block it. Sideboard lands are normal. Maybe I should be playing the creature land. I remember it not being very good. I should probably be playing it anyways. Sorry about that. Let me just remember which one that is. That's Fort Ravelon. No, it's the wrong one again. You would want the one that cares about controlling a forest, because you have more forest. No, wait, you want the one that cares about planes, not the one that cares about forest, because you have more planes than forest. Whatever, you probably play like one of these. Anyways, in the sideboard, there's Rosin, clad in Guilt. I think this card is just good. I think, like, there's a lot of stuff you want to side out, depending on the matchup, the Masksmith, the Heralds. And this is, like, very annoying against stuff that try to use 1-for-1 interaction because of the ward. Lunate Charm is kind of a multi-purpose sideboard card, dealing with removal spells and graveyards. You don't really have a... You could also run Crucible and just not be fancy. Graceful Finalizer for enchantments and also graveyards. Choir Ascendant, once again, mid-range off matchups like Flesh Collection. This really does go over the top of almost everything. 6 mana for 16 power of flyers in like a board stall matchup. And Onomastic. I think Onomastic is your best option for anti-board wipe tools. And this deck does really want an anti-board wipe tool. And Swift Approach for battles. Okay, and the last deck, a number 12. Just because you've been such a good audience. Black White Heartsuit. Hey, you may notice this deck has no Exalts of Twiltrie cards in it. This is just normal Black White Heartsuit, like we've seen run This deck lost absolutely nothing with Saros Aegitrax rotating, and it's still good. This deck still presents enormous threats. It still does so very early. It's still quite good against other creature decks because it can go over the top of them. The main reason this deck has gotten a little worse is that there's basically this deck is probably going to catch a little bit of collateral damage. Well, first of all, Verdant Radiance exists. That's not that huge of a problem. Um, I mean, we used to have a God Divided, and this kills you roughly the same amount. It's slightly better because you can't use Melon to stop it. But more importantly, oh my god, I can't type. Culling Ritual now exists. That's a problem. This deck really hates Culling Ritual. It kills literally every permanent except for Gone Pickin'. Um, yeah, Culling Ritual is really bad, and it's a card people are probably going to put in their sideboards to deal with other token decks. And another card I didn't put in any of my sideboards, but I think is actually pretty legit. Click, if you're worried about tokens decks, hard suit, or creature token decks. This card's also like a quite good catch-all sideboard tool. But Black White Heartsuit, it's built around Attuned Acolyte, which gives all of your artifact and enchantment tokens exalted. Kitsune Matriarch, which gets bigger whenever you make a token. Wayward Drek, the backside of Wayward Drek counts the number of artifacts you control. Sculptor's Replica also counts the number of artifacts you control. So you have so many things that benefit from having random artifact tokens, such as the Hard Suit off Acolyte, the tokens off Drek, the berries off Smart Shopper. Half of these things work with the tokens, the Clique tokens off of Melon, which also protects your board and gets it past blockers. Lost Resistor makes artifact tokens as well. Gone Pickin' makes a berry token. Lost Connection, I think, is actually a pretty good card. You could also run Swift Approach, basically. Swift Approach got a buff. It now hits battles as well. I think this deck is fast enough that it can afford Lost Connection instead of Swift Approach, avoid giving your opponent the card selection or card advantage. Sovereign Execution, you run in every black deck. Bind Life to Steel is kind of your anti-removal thing, sided out against mid-range. But it's very good because all the cards in this deck all the creatures at least, are very cheap. So you can easily Bind Life to Steel, X equals 2, get back a huge board. Now they're artifacts, so they buff your Sculptor's Replica tokens even more. Mono base is normal, and so is the sideboard with the extra Bind Life to Steel in there. Yeah, this deck is not. Okay, there's one Twiltrie card. There's Clash's Shade of Maw in the sideboard. This deck, once again, it got nothing new, but it is, I think, still quite good. And that's the 12 decks I'm looking to run in Exalts of Twiltrie Standard. I just looked at the League promos, and there are a lot of very exciting League promos up for grabs. The format seems wide open. The aggro decks seem good, but not unbeatable. The control decks have some really interesting avenues to explore. Husk Forger is a complete game changer that makes like Naya and Jund and other like 3-drop centric decks like a thing when they weren't before. And there's lots of other like weird stuff, Esper Tempo, Survivor decks, either controlling or aggro. Field's wide open. Can't wait to see what people come up with, because I'm sure I have not even come close to scratching the surface of all the things you can do in Exalts of Twiltrie Standard. So see you in the Revolution chat, and good night.